The Fall of the Berlin Wall, How Bricks Broke an Empire. It was supposed to be a routine press, but by the time the microphones cooled and the camera stopped rolling, the Berlin Wall, 28 years tall and terrifying, was crumbling under the weight of a clerical error, political panic, and a nation's pent-up dreams. Ask yourself, how could a single confused sentence bring down a fortified border guarded by bullets and fear? Why did a wall once meant to keep people in become the site of history's most unexpected celebration? And what really happened on that ordinary Thursday night in 1989 that turned the Cold War upside down, one checkpoint at a time? To find out, we rewind to a divided Germany, where the Allies sliced up a country like a Cold War pie, where Berlin became the most awkward roommate situation in history, and where concrete turned into both a cage and eventually a stage. After World War II ended in 1945, Germany was like a broken vase at a garage sale. Each of the four victorious allies picked up a piece. The country was divided into 4 zones, controlled by the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and the Soviet Union, who wasted no time stamping their part with a bold red hammer and sickle. Despite being deep in Soviet territory, Berlin, the capital, was also divided into 4 sectors. Why? Because nothing says post-war confusion like carving up one city in the middle of your frenemy's backyard. In 1949, the divided zone solidified into West Germany, democratic, capitalist, and decked out in American jazz and blue jeans, and East Germany, officially the German Democratic Republic, GDR, though it was about as democratic as a vending machine that only sells state-approved carrots. West Germany thrived in the 1950s like a startup with great PR. Meanwhile, East Germany was handing out more rations than raves. Cue mass emigration. By the late 50s, 3.5 million East Germans, many young and educated, had packed up their dreams and defected to the West, most through the giant sneaky loophole that was Berlin. See, Berlin was a divided city within a divided country. The physical border between East and West Germany was guarded, mined, and draped in barbed wire, but Berlin, wide open. You could just take a tram across town and stroll into democracy with a schnitzel in one hand and freedom in the other. So on August 13, 1961, East Berliners woke up and rubbed their eyes to a surreal scene. Soldiers stringing barbed wire through the city streets. Boom! Berlin was sliced in half like a bratwurst at Oktoberfest. Over the next days, weeks, and years, wire became concrete. Guard towers sprouted like mushrooms, floodlights lit the no-man's land, and armed guards with itchy trigger fingers were told to shoot on sight. No visa? No exit. Unless, of course, you had a tunnel, hot air balloon, or an extraordinary case of, oops, I ended up in the sewer and crawled my way to freedom. Fast forward to the 1980s. The Soviet Union was wobbling under the weight of economic stagnation and discontent. Then came Mikhail Gorbachev, the unexpected reformer with a birthmark and a penchant for shaking up authoritarian norms. He introduced glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring, words that made hardliners sweat and citizens hopeful. Eastern Bloc countries smelled change. In East Germany, waves of peaceful protests, starting with the now famous Monday demonstrations in Leipzig, swelled into a roar of voices demanding freedom. Even East Germany's neighbors, Hungary and Czechoslovakia, began flinging their border gates open like rebellious teenagers sneaking out after curfew. Tens of thousands of East Germans funneled through these new escape routes, creating political chaos and one overwhelmed press secretary. Enter Günter Schabowski, an East German official who was handed a piece of paper, literally right before a televised press conference on November 9, 1989, outlining new, slightly relaxed travel laws. Journalists asked, "When does this take effect?" Schabowski, fumbling like someone who hadn't read the homework, muttered, "As far as I know, effective immediately." Mic drop. Within hours, thousands swarmed the border crossings. The guards, lacking clear orders, completely outnumbered, and most definitely not paid enough for this. Just opened the gates. Berliners on both sides poured through in shock and jubilation, hammering away at the wall with anything they could get their hands on. Hammers, chisels, or sheer willpower. Cue David Hasselhoff, rising from the cultural mist like a sequined phoenix, belting, "I've been looking for freedom" atop the fallen wall. It was theatrical, it was surreal, and it was somehow perfect. By late 1989, East Germany, the German Democratic Republic, was in a tailspin. The country had become the sad party guest at the socialist soiree, too rigid, too paranoid, and way out of step with the groove of Gorbachev's reforms and the people's growing courage. The youth were leaving, the workers were protesting, and the streets were humming with chants for liberty. Catherine Baumbach, our time-traveling insider from the East German news agency, nailed it. Even some GDR officials began to realize the wall that kept people in might also push them to collapse. So they devised a classic regime tactic. Let's loosen the leash, and maybe they'll stop yanking it. On November 8, 1989, Gerhard Lauder, an official in the GDR's Interior Ministry, was handed a political hot potato. Write up new travel rules and make them soothing. The result? A document that quietly slipped a sledgehammer into the hands of East Germans. Less than a day later, the rules were finalized. The key phrase was a bureaucratic gem cloaked in plainclothes. Private trips abroad can be applied for without conditions. Permits are issued on short notice. What sounded like polite paperwork was in fact a bombshell. Without conditions meant no more elaborate vetting, no more interrogations, no need to prove why you wanted to see your grandmother in the West. You could just go and come back. Now for the twist. That afternoon, a typed copy of the new travel guidelines made its way to Günter Schabowski, the GDR's government spokesman. Unfortunately, it arrived approximately 5 minutes before his televised press conference, with all the subtlety of a flaming envelope lobbed into his briefcase. With zero prep time and about 17 reporters breathing down his neck, Schabowski hastily scribbled a reminder in the margins of his press notes: announce new travel rules. In bureaucrat speak, this is the equivalent of, oh, right, tell everyone the borders are now kinda open. At 6:53 p.m. on November 9th on live East German TV, Schabowski squinted at the unfamiliar document and began reading out loud. Word for word. No edits, no footnotes. Just spontaneous liberation streaming into millions of living rooms. The room went quiet. The country held its breath. Baumbach, watching alongside newsroom colleagues, recalled the hush. It seemed totally unreal. Veteran reporters turned to each other and whispered, "This is it. This is the beginning of the end." The moment had slipped through the cracks of totalitarian control like a rogue pigeon at a military parade. Then came the clincher. A journalist calmly raised a hand and asked, "When do these new rules take effect?" Cue Schabowski, caught like a deer in headlines. He rustled his papers, blinked a few times, and mumbled, "As far as I know, effective immediately." Boom. This was not in the plan. Had he turned the final page of the memo, he would have read that the rules were supposed to go into effect the next day, so that the passport offices could be ready and guards could be prepped with new protocols. But Schabowski, the well-meaning mouthpiece of the state, had just announced the spontaneous opening of the Berlin Wall on live television. So what happened next? We get wild crowds, stunned border guards, and history bending at the knees for the sheer absurdity of it all. And yes, it gets better from here. Would you like me to continue with what happened at the border crossings later that night? Or maybe you'd like visual prompts to animate these moments too. I've got goosebumps just thinking about it. By 7:05 p.m., mere minutes after Günter Schabowski's unplanned declaration on East German live TV, the Associated Press, AP, fired off a bulletin that detonated like freedom-laced dynamite. GDR opens borders. Why? Because it came from an official source, on state-run television, broadcast across the globe. Journalists didn't wait for a second source. It was the source. In a Cold War world obsessed with subtext and spin, this was pure, unfiltered policy change, an unheard-of anomaly from a normally meticulous regime. West German networks picked it up within minutes. East German outlets, despite being state-controlled, had no choice but to echo the clip that was already viral by 1989 standards. For the first time in decades, East and West Germans were watching the same story unfold, with the same look of disbelief. By 8 p.m., like a flash mob birthed by hope and hearsay, East Berliners began trickling toward border checkpoints like Bornholmer Strasse and Checkpoint Charlie. Why? Because Schabowski had just told millions they could cross. No clarifications followed, no memos handed down, no guards briefed. Just a countrywide game of telephone with freedom on the line. Border guards stood baffled as polite but persistent citizens arrived, clutching ID papers and asking if they could go west now. The guards hesitated. They phoned supervisors, who either didn't answer, shrugged, or told them to stall. And so, the guards tried to let people through slowly, hoping to stretch the chaos thin. That night, a West German TV broadcast re-aired the moment Schabowski said the new travel rules were effective immediately. This was no longer a rumor. It was official, on repeat, in living color, on both sides of the wall. Reality check. They weren't supposed to be immediate. The plan was for new protocols to start the next day, after passport offices opened and guards were properly instructed. But no one saw that final memo. And by 10:42 p.m., it didn't matter. Tens of thousands of East Berliners surged toward the wall like a tidal wave of bottled-up hope. Not protesters this time, believers. East German border guards had never been this outnumbered. Trained for discipline, not diplomacy, they faced a moral whiplash. Shoot innocent families? Or let them pass? Baumbach put it best. Somehow they hadn't gotten the message, or they didn't know what to do, or they were afraid. Who knows? In the face of overwhelming crowds, the guards buckled. Without a single shot fired, they opened the gates, and thousands ran, not away, but into West Berlin. People hugged strangers, climbed over barricades, smashed souvenir-sized chunks from the wall. History shattered beneath their boots. This wasn't just jubilation, it was redemption. Over the wall's brutal 28-year history, at least 140 people died attempting to cross. Some were shot, others drowned. Some suffocated in tunnels. Every successful escape had carried the shadow of someone who didn't make it. So when those checkpoints opened, it wasn't just a border falling, it was mourning turning into triumph, a living monument collapsing under the weight of its own cruelty. Baumbach reflected on what followed. I basically went from one political system to another, and it happened without a revolution, without a shot fired, without a leader on a balcony. It was the result of a botched announcement, a rushed memo, and a press conference so boring that no one expected it to change the world. But it did. By the time midnight struck, the Berlin Wall was no longer a prison. It was a photo op. And East Germans weren't escaping anymore. They were returning home. If you've been hooked by this unraveling of history, don't let the next moment of intrigue slip by. Hit that subscribe button, tap the bell icon, and follow our journey through time, truth, and turning points. More riveting tales await. You won't want to miss a brick.